A tick doesn't need much. Tall grass, a deer trail, a woodpile nobody's moved in a season. That's it. That's the whole recipe for a yard that gives your dog Lyme disease. Or worse, gives it to your kid after an afternoon in the yard. Most people spray for it. A truck rolls in every 6 weeks. A guy in a hazmat-looking suit walks the fence line, and the bill lands in your mailbox a few days later. It works, for a while. But it also kills the good bugs along with the bad ones. The barn cats get sick licking chemical residue off their paws, and the ticks that survive the spray breed the next generation a little more resistant to whatever you just paid for. The Amish don't do any of that. No trucks, no permethrin, no chemical account on retainer. And by most accounts from the farms that keep this up year over year, their yards run cleaner than the sprayed ones next door, sometimes noticeably so by the second or third summer. So what are they actually doing instead? Turns out it isn't one trick, it's about 6 of them, stacked on top of each other, and none of them cost much more than time and a willingness to do the same small chores every single day. Start with the birds, because that's where most Amish farms actually start. A small flock of guinea fowl, loose in the yard from spring through fall, will spend all day picking through the grass, and ticks sit near the top of their diet, right alongside grasshoppers and beetles. One flock can't sterilize 100 acres, but turned loose around the house, the barn, the paths people and animals actually walk every day, they put a real dent in the population before anything else gets tried. Guineas are loud, they're not affectionate, and they'll wander onto the road if you let them, which is exactly why some neighbours complain about them before they understand what they're for. Nobody keeps guineas because they're pleasant company. They keep them because a bird that eats ticks for free beats a chemical that costs money every month and still leaves the ticks half alive. Chickens do a version of the same job, lower to the ground, scratching through the leaf litter and the mulch where ticks actually wait for a host. And that's the detail most people miss entirely. A tick doesn't chase you down. It climbs a blade of grass or a low shrub and waits, sometimes for months at a time, front legs spread out, for something warm to brush past close enough to grab onto. Scratch up that grass, expose that waiting tick to open air, dry sunlight and a hungry bird, and you've broken the ambush before it ever gets the chance to happen. But birds alone don't explain a yard with almost no ticks in it. The bigger lever, the one most people never even consider, is what the grass itself looks like, and more specifically, how humid it stays. Ticks need humidity to survive between meals. Not standing water, humidity, the kind that sits low and heavy in tall, shaded, undisturbed grass where the air barely moves. So an Amish yard gets mowed shorter and more often than the average suburban lawn. And the tree line at the edge of the property gets pushed back a good few feet further than most homeowners bother with. That gap between the woods and the open yard isn't decoration. It's a dry, sun-baked strip of ground that a tick physically can't cross without drying out and dying somewhere in the middle of it. Landscapers call it a tick safe zone when they talk about it at all, usually as an afterthought tacked onto a mowing schedule. On a working Amish farm, it functions closer to a load-bearing part of the property, something checked and maintained the same way a fence line gets checked. Then there's the animals themselves, which is where the method gets genuinely clever. Because the same rotational grazing that Amish dairy farms use to keep pasture healthy also happens to starve out tick populations, without anybody planning it that way from the start. Here's the logic. Ticks that feed on a cow or a goat eventually drop off into the grass to molt or lay their eggs in that exact patch of ground. Leave the herd on one field all season, the way a lot of conventional operations do, and you're basically building the tick a permanent nursery that refills itself every few weeks. Move the herd every few days instead, the way most Amish operations already do, to keep the grass from getting overgrazed and to let it recover, and the ticks that dropped off last week are left sitting in a field with no host coming back anytime soon. Some die out there waiting. Some get picked off by birds working the ground behind the herd, which, on a lot of these farms, is also not an accident at all. Chickens or guineas often follow a day or two behind the cattle on purpose, cleaning up exactly the ground the herd just vacated, before it has time to become a problem again. None of that needed a chemical. It needed a fence that moves, and a farmer willing to move it. Now the parts that actually go on the ground, literally. Diatomaceous earth shows up on a lot of Amish properties. A fine white powder made from crushed fossilized algae shells. And it works by a method that sounds almost too simple to believe. It's not poison, not in the way people usually mean the word. It's abrasive at a microscopic level, sharp enough under a microscope to cut into the waxy outer layer that keeps a tick or a flea from drying out. And once that layer is compromised, the insect loses moisture and dies within a day or two. Dust it along the base of the fence, around the doghouse, into the cracks of the barn floor where animals bed down, and it keeps working as long as it stays dry. Get it wet from rain or dew, and the effect stops cold, which is the actual reason some families reapply it every couple of weeks through the wettest part of summer, rather than putting it down once and forgetting about it. Cedar shows up too, though people mean a few different things by that. Some farms plant cedar or juniper along the property line as a windbreak that doubles as a tick-repelling border, since a lot of insects seem to avoid the oils those trees put off. Others go simpler and just spread cedar mulch or cedar chips around the areas where animals bed down at night, on the theory, and by most accounts it holds up, that the natural oils in the wood discourage ticks from settling in close to where a dog or a goat sleeps. It's not a wall. Nothing on this list is a wall by itself. It's one more small thing making the yard a slightly worse place to be a tick, stacked on top of 5 other things doing the same work from a different angle. And then there's the one that surprises almost everyone who hears about it for the first time. Opossums. Most people grow up thinking of an opossum as a nuisance, something that gets into the trash cans at night and hisses at the porch light when the dog corners it. But an opossum passing through a property will eat a genuinely large number of ticks in a single season, grooming them right off its own body during the day and picking up others while it forages at night. And more than a few Amish farmers have quietly learned to just leave the opossums alone, rather than trap them the way they'd trap a raccoon getting into the chicken feed. It's not a species anyone is raising on purpose, it's one they've stopped fighting once somebody figured out what it was actually doing for free, night after night, without being asked. Put all of that together. Birds working the ground during the day, grass kept short and the tree line pushed back so the air stays dry. Cattle rotated off tick nurseries before the eggs even have time to hatch. Diatomaceous earth in the places animals actually sleep. Cedar where it fits into the layout. Opossums left alone instead of trapped on site. And what you get is a yard that never needed a spray truck in the first place. Not because the Amish found some secret chemical-free spray, but because they never approached it looking for one single fix to begin with. Nothing on that list does the whole job by itself. That's actually the point of the whole approach. A spray truck tries to solve the problem in one pass, all at once, and ends up missing half of what it's aiming at. Because a tick's life cycle has too many stages and too many hiding places for any single method to catch all of them. 6 small things, layered right, each one hitting the problem at a different stage, simply don't miss nearly as much. It isn't free in the way people usually mean when they hear no chemicals. It costs labour, real and daily. Somebody has to move the fence every few days, rain or shine. Somebody has to reapply the powder after every hard rain. Somebody has to actually mow, by hand or by horse-drawn mower, on a schedule that a lot of suburban homeowners would find genuinely exhausting to keep up with past the first month of summer. The Amish aren't beating chemical pest control because they stumbled onto some clever shortcut nobody else thought of. They're beating it because the daily work was never optional for them to begin with. And a method that demands attention every single day only looks impossible to people who were never going to give a yard that kind of attention in the first place. Which raises the real question underneath all of this. Not whether it works, because by most accounts, across enough farms and enough summers, it clearly does. The question is whether the rest of us, used to paying someone else to make a problem disappear once a month and forget about it in between, could actually keep up with a solution that asks something from us every single day instead, with no truck ever coming to bail us out if we let it slide.